Hello, BookTube. I went out and about today briefly. It was much less humid, and it was still warm. It was a bright, sunny, blue sky day. And I had a couple of errands to run, so I went out and about, and oh my. As I've mentioned on this channel a few times, I have a way with dogs. And whatever it is, whatever that way is, it was cranked up to the maximum today, because I got my face slurped by every four-legged creature in the world. That's amazing. It led to some awkward conversations with owners, especially. There were two people at two different points in my day who were just dumbfounded. The dog simply doesn't ever do that. They were, in one case the dog was 2 years old, in one case the dog was 10 years old, and in both cases the owners were seeing a behavior they had never seen before, and didn't know what to make of it. One of the two groups asked me a question that I have heard probably a billion times in my life, which is, are you carrying food? I always have to tell them, no, I'm not carrying food. I don't have any dog treats on me. This happens all the time. And today it happened just maximally. I'm not complaining. It was wonderful. And it also didn't lead to the Spanish Inquisition when I got back, which I noticed right away. Frida is a terrier. She's not a hound. I have mostly in my life had tricolor hounds, one basset hound and an endless sea of beagles, and they live by their nose completely. I mean, terrier's nose is very sharp, but Frida is very much more hearing and eye associated than nose associated, especially hearing. I've noticed she doesn't miss anything. But if it doesn't make a sound, if it's just a scent factor, then she's not all that interested, and she loses interest pretty quick. So I was coming back to the house, and I was thinking along the lines of the basset hound and all those beagles. I was thinking, you're going to be the subject of silent, intense scrutiny for 25 minutes as they sift out all these smells on you. Frida took a smell, I think, once, and then resumed bouncing up and down. She didn't care at all. And since I was out and about, and since I'm me, I got some books. In fact, I got quite a few books. So I'm going to trust that you'll be gentle in your mockery of my recently stated desire to decrease the number of books that I own. I do still have that desire. That desire hasn't gone anywhere. I can take in any number of books, provided I also get rid of books, and provided I'd like in the second half of 2018 to get rid of more books than I take in. I can still do that. No matter how many books I got today. I got a huge stack of books today. Most of them were free, or effectively free. I didn't spend any money at all, really, to speak of. A couple of dollars at the most. And all of them are of interest. And I don't know at this point how many of them will stay. Some of them will. I'm hoping most of them won't. I was out and about anyway. I had a tote bag with me. I don't go to the library anymore, so I will just read these things. They will be of interest, they will serve their purpose, and then most of them will go, I would assume. Unless I love them so much that they stay. So, sorry, I'm preaching to the choir, I know. So I wanted to show you the books that I got. I have them right here. The first one is a paperback, a lovely orange spine penguin paperback of The Pursuit of Love by Nancy Mitford. This is her novel about a posh and eccentric family in the idyllic time before World War II, and it's a family, almost entirely based on her own posh and eccentric family. So there's lots of Mitfordiana. There's lots of Mitfordiana baked into the stories and the exploits here. I haven't read this in forever. I haven't read it in, I don't even know how long. Last time that I read it, it was in a Modern Library hardcover with a beige dust jacket, and it had the Pursuit of Love and Love in a Cold Climate, these two Nancy Mitford novels often paired together. And I remember thinking, when I read it in that book, that I thought that pairing was annoying. And here I found it without that pairing. I found it just on its own. So I grabbed it. It struck me as sort of in tune with slight movement that I detect far under the surface of BookTube, at least in my neighborhood of BookTube, the people that I watch religiously. seem to be gravitating towards and appreciating more and more this cadre of super authors, of women from the mid 20th century. And I couldn't be happier about that. I have been singing the praises of these women for decades. Not just in fiction either, but also as in nonfiction and especially as translators. And so the idea that there's a massive Muriel Spark read-along, the idea I'm seeing names crop up, including names that have been forgotten, that please me greatly. and Nancy Mitford is right in that zone. So, and I haven't read the book in a long time, and this way I can just read on its own. The next one is an author we've just seen recently on this channel. We saw her under one of her many pen names, and the pen name at the time was Victoria Holt, but in this she's writing as Jean Plaidy, and this is Murder Most Royal. It is 2 of her novels. She wrote a series of novels about the wives of King Henry VIII. She did a bunch of Tudor novels that had nothing to do with the wives, but she also did, dutifully, I swear, you have to sign a contract, a novel on every one of the wives. And this is the Murder Most Royal. If I remember correctly, this volume, there was a whole bunch of very nice, attractive Jean Plaidy reprints from about 20 years ago. And if I remember correctly, this one contains the novels for Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard. Just those 2 stories of the 2 wives who got beheaded. and I love this author. I just think she's fantastic. Talk about it, is another perfect example of the cadre of authors that I'm talking about. And I loved these pretty combined editions that who did this? Was it Three Rivers Press put these out a while ago, and I love them. I had them. I got them as they came out, but then I gave them away because friends always want to know, what's a really good involving historical fiction that's also reliable, where the author is not, killing historical characters in some way. They didn't die. And Jean Plaidy, Victoria Holt, took her research fairly seriously. So, like, for instance, her novels about Queen Victoria, I've seen them used as supplementary materials in schools during a module studying the reign of Queen Victoria. That's how thought-provokingly accurate they tend to be, without being boring. Jean Plaidy, Victoria Holt, whatever name she writes under, she's not boring. so I grabbed this because I don't have it. And then the next 2 are also Orange Spine Penguins, trade paperbacks of oversight that I want to correct, a small oversight, and this is Imperial Blandings by P.G. Wodehouse and Life at Blandings. And between them, they contain 6 Blandings novels. This Imperial Blandings, these are all about life at Blandings Castle with Dottie Lord Elmsworth and his prize-winning pig. You might wonder why there's a pig on the cover of both books. It's because the Empress of Blandings is a pig. She's a prize-winning pig who is the love of Lord Emsworth's life. It's a little bit hard to explain, but I love the books, but I don't love them as much as Jeeves and Wooster, and I want to see... I know they have rabid, die-hard fans, and I want to read more Blandings, and the last Blandings that I got in the mail was, I think, by Duckworth Press or something like that. It was a beautiful box set of 3 hardcovers. And it just, a beautiful box set of 3 gorgeous dust-jacketed hardcovers didn't seem like the right way to read Blandings. I don't know why, but it just didn't. So I don't think I have that collection anymore. And when I got rid of it, I thought, I will just wait. A big anthology or some paperbacks will show up somewhere that I will like, and I love these. I love the look of both of these. So this was I saw them and thought, perfect. That's exactly why I let things go. That's exactly why I wait for secondhand shops to provide what they will, because I tend to be lucky. I tend to find things. But this one, Imperial Blandings, has Full Moon, Pigs Have Wings, and Service with a Smile. And this one has Something Fresh, Summer Lightning, and Heavy Weather. And most of those 6 short novels, I have only read once. Most of them I've only read once. I think there's only one there that I think what was it? Heavy Weather, I think I've read twice. So I will be discovering a lot of new stuff. This will be a lot of summer fun. Then the next one, author who has never done it for me, but boy, oh boy, does she have fans. So I picked her most congenial, the book that subject-wise, plot-wise, is most congenial to me. When I saw it, I just grabbed it. This will be a chance to see if I can get what people love about this author. This is Penelope Fitzgerald. It's her tiny novella called The Bookshop, about a middle-aged woman who opens a bookstore. If that doesn't do it, I don't know what will. I read it, but when it first came out, God, what was that? I don't even know. I read it a long time ago. Yeah, it came out in the US, first US edition was 97, and I think I read it then and thought it's good. There's nothing wrong with it. It's kind of bland, and I have received hissing looks from people when I say that to them about this author. So I am perfectly willing to admit there might be something I missed. So I'm going to give it another try. And it was easy to just drop it in a tote bag. Then the next one is a category of books. I noticed a lot of love for it on BookTube, this particular category. If it doesn't get love on BookTube, I don't know where it would get love. Books about books, books about reading, books about the joy of reading. And this is by Lynn Sharon Schwartz. It's Ruined by Reading, A Life in Books. It's another very thin memoir that I read when it first came out. Again, in the mid-90s, 1996. And I liked it. I thought with books about reading, I always like to be more about the books than about the person. And this one wasn't. And I don't know if maybe I was just impatient at the time, but I'm definitely going to give it another try. Because books like that tend not to displease me. They, in fact, tend to end up in this room. I don't know if you can... Okay, if you follow my finger, right there, that yellow spine is arguably by Christopher Hitchens, and that is Sasquatch. And that bookcase, that is an owl right there with a Greek inscription on it. And those 5 shelves on that bookcase right there are entirely books about books, collections of book reviews, book essays, that sort of thing. And this should go there. Most of them are there that I've read. Most of them I've liked so much that they go on that shelf. So I'll see if and then the next one is a modern library paperback, just a pretty modern library paperback of the complete story, the essential Father Brown. The stories of this Catholic priest who seems very benign on the surface, but actually loves to solve crimes. It has an introduction by P.D. James, who I love. There is collected Father Brown short stories in Penguin Classic, a Black Spine Penguin Classic. I don't have it, but I know that it's out there. I've seen it, and I don't have any Father Brown at the moment, except in mystery anthologies. So when I saw this for nothing, I grabbed it. It's the thing that bothers me is it's not all of them. There aren't so many Father Brown stories that you couldn't put them in one volume. That wouldn't be much bigger than this, I don't think. And Father Brown is a classical crime detective. That's never really worked for me. Just the same thing as, if you'll pardon a scandalous admission, Hercule Poirot has never really worked for me. It's just amazing. He should. Miss Marple, absolutely. To the last detail, absolutely. But Hercule Poirot and his little gray cells, no, no. And Father Brown, neither. And I don't quite know why. So. When I saw this, it's pretty, and it's in perfect condition, so I grabbed it. Then the next one is a book that I read. I read an advanced copy. I read the finished copy. I read the paperback. I got rid of them all because it struck me as all hat and no cattle. It struck me as a great deal of sound and fury, signifying very little. And when I saw the paperback, another Orange Spine Penguin paperback today, for nothing. I grabbed it. I just heaved it into the tote bag because I'll give it another try. Again, it's a thing where it has left me with a nagging suspicion that I did not do it justice, and that is an author who really annoys me, Neil Ferguson. This is the War of the World, which is his reinterpretation of 20th century military history and the clash of societies. The extreme shorthand, the unjust shorthand reduction of this book, which is huge, is that World War II never ended. That World War II didn't actually ever end. And that maybe war itself has never ended. I don't really know. Towards the last 150 pages, all 3 times that I read it. it sort of wandered off for me. So I'm going to give it another try. We're not going to hear from this author for a while, I don't think, because he's right now deeply ensconced in a gigantic 2-volume kiss-ass biography of Henry Kissinger. The first volume was almost unpalatable. I almost couldn't finish it, which in a work of serious biography by a serious historian is unheard of for me. And I don't even know what explains that. I know that I could barely finish it because I lived through the time when Kissinger ruled the world, purely to the world's detriment. And I think that Ferguson did too. So that baffled me, utterly baffled me. And I think he has one more volume in that to go before he does any more work of this kind of nature, or anything like that. But I'm going to give this another try. I have it. It will go on the immediate read shelf. I am increasingly making room for... I've mentioned on this channel a few times in recent videos that I mostly read new releases, and every time I've said that, it's felt a little wrong. And I've slowly, creepingly been making a little room for older reading, older nonfiction rereads of classics, that sort of thing. And I have noticed that it hugely improves my reading just in general. So I think I want to add more of that. The new releases aren't going anywhere, and I will still do my justice by them, but I have lots of reading time. I think I can probably spare a little for, which might explain why a lot of these books are here in the first place. Not that all of them are staying, mind you. But, this next one is A Moment's Liberty, and it is an abridgment of the journals of Virginia Woolf. And I love the journals of Virginia Woolf, but they were overproduced as a cottage industry in, I think, 50 volumes or whatever. And this is the book that you want. I was kind of hoping that the next time I saw it would be a dust-jacketed hardcover, but I'll definitely take this. I'll just reinforce it, because this is, most authors in their journals are not worth reading. John Cheever is an exception. James Boswell is an exception, and Virginia Woolf enormously is an exception too. You have to get used to the slightly odd person that you're spending time with. The one thing that will strike you right away, you don't need to read more than 10 journal entries in any given year, just at random. And the one thing that will strike you right away is that this is perhaps the greatest hypochondriac who has ever walked the face of the earth. So you're constantly feeling her pulse with her, or checking out some spot on her hand or whatever. But another thing that comes through, obviously, all the time, is just an inveterate, dyed-in-the-wool reader. Every breath, every thought is no more than one circle of orbit away from books and reading and writing. It's just, I was very happy to find this. I'll reinforce it, but this is the recension. This is the abridgment of her journals that you really want. So I'm again happy to find it. And the next one, another huge tome. I just threw it in the tote bag. I did all this cavalier throwing in tote bags, of course, by reflex, without remembering that I had no muscular teenager to help me. I was going to have to carry the end result on my own. So I wasn't happy at the end of all this throwing into tote bags, but I'm glad to have all the books here. This is a huge thing by Peter Ackroyd. This is his huge history of London that I read and absolutely loved. I don't have a copy because I've had a couple of copies over the years. I just tend to give them away. This author is currently doing a multi-volume history of England. So thoroughly Whiggish project that I didn't believe it was possible. I didn't believe him and Simon Schama, both of them. I don't know what pitch they made to their publishers, trundling into their publishers and saying, "Well, Nigel, I have this idea, a multi-volume history of England." So I don't get it. I don't know why any publisher would greenlight that. Maybe one volume, maybe heavily illustrated, but no. Peter Ackroyd has been doing a multi-volume history of England, and it is really, really good. This is an Old Bailey hack of an author. He cannot do wrong. He cannot write a boring book. London is fantastic. Maybe the best single book of his that I've ever read. And that's saying a lot, because I've read pretty much everything this author's ever written, and all of it's been really good. This one glows with love. And some of his volumes of the History of England do too, especially the one that's coming out in the autumn. It's not out yet. It's called Dominion, and it's the part of his story that brings the history of England up to the Victorian era. It's a history of the Victorian era. And, oh boy, is it good. I will be singing its praises once I don't know if I've shown the advanced copy on camera. But once I get the finished copy, I will sing its praises to you. But in the meantime, I'm happy to have this. It probably won't last long. I'll probably end up giving it away to somebody. But then the next one is a testament to the mysteries of Steve's book collection. The other day I got a big, fat, forthcoming biography of Thomas Cromwell by Dermot McCullough, a great historian of the Protestant Reformation. And this is a huge 700-page biography of Cromwell that's coming out in the autumn. And I showed it on camera, and then I was glomming over all those books once the camera was off. And then I thought, well, he was at his most insightful in a lot of ways on the Protestant Reformation, and his most aphoristic. This is an author who can write very long books, but he's very good in short books too. I was thinking, I remember that some of his thoughts on his biography of Edward VI were really good. Edward the Sixth was the boy king of England. He was he was the legitimate male heir that Henry VIII wanted so bad, and finally got, and thought, therefore, the kingdom is at peace. But Edward died unexpectedly as a teenager. But Edward was fairly zealous when he was young. When he was alive and healthy and looked like he was going to rule for the next 60 years, he was fairly zealous about the Reformed Church. And I remember when I was glomming over the Cromwell biography thinking, well, the first thing I need to do is reread the Cromwell and the Reformation parts of McCullough's book on Edward VI. Reached out my hand for it and grasped thin air. No McCullough Edward VI. Even though I have every other Edward VI book there is, I have the printed volumes that Oxford did of his state papers and his journal. Don't have it. So I found it. I found it. This is The Boy King by Dermot McCullough. This is a study not just of Edward, but of the Reformation and the crucial changes in its course that Edward oversaw. So now I have it. It'd be very nice if I could hold on to it until such time as I need it. Then the next one was just serendipity. It was just pure serendipity. I love it when this happens. I was talking recently at the Christian Science Monitor to a young man there who was telling me about his reading. It's the first thing I ask anybody about. And I think in the Monitor's precincts I am fairly well acquainted. I'm fairly well associated with books, since it's all I'm ever there for. That's all I do. And this young man, smart, energetic reader, the natural question came up, what has been making an impression on you lately? And my answers to those questions tend to make people's eyes glaze over, unfortunately. They tend to involve the Habsburg Empire or the Mughal Empire or the Raj or something like that. Where people, unless they're dyed-in-the-wool nonfiction fans, they're going to feign interest, is the polite way to put it. But when he talked, one of the people he mentioned was W.G. Sebald, who is an author who has never worked for me. Is an author who's venerated by a lot of people whose opinions I respect, but his books just have not worked on me, either in German or in English. They've just struck me as wool gathering. And this young man was talking about how he just read Austerlitz and really liked it. And Austerlitz, it's the longest of Sebald's work, and it's the one that made the strongest impression on me, that moved the needle closest to a positive reaction. It still didn't do anything for me, but at the end of our conversation, I sort of informally told him, next time I see a copy of Austerlitz, I will get it, and I will read it. With a wide open mind, I will sit down and re-engage with this book, and by extension, this author. And sure enough, I found a copy. Deckled edges, wonderful hardcover. Also, this one has, somebody did what I always do. They just made tons and tons of Sebald-related clippings. Anything from the New York Times Book Review or anywhere else. Where I think his obituary is in here. There's just tons and tons of clippings. Obviously, they did what I do, which is they had this book on their shelf, and every time they came across in any book review, anything related to this author. They just stuck it in this one book. And I have done that countless in this room. There are countless repositories like that. If I have one big book on the Roman poet Horace, and I come across anything that's related, even if it's a book that's not that book, I'll put that review in the Horace book until it's just bristling with them. Same thing with everybody, with everything. The Peloponnesian War, George Eliot, Jane Austen biographies, you name it. And I do that. I do that same thing. So it's weird to see and comforting in a way, because it tells me that my kind of reader, a reader very much like me in some ways, read this book and liked it enough to keep it and fill it. So I'm glad. I was glad to find it. I will give it a try. I will prioritize it. I will do it this week, just to see. Because this author's been nagging at me anyway. And then the next one, an author who does not nag at me. This is John Fowles, whose novels have never done anything for me at all, just flat like a pancake. Now, this is Wormholes, which is a collection of his occasional writings and essays, his book essays, his autobiographical essays, speeches, that sort of thing. I have often found that when I come across a volume like this, I tend to like it more than I do the fictional output of the author in question. A perfect example would be Penelope Fitzgerald, who we saw, whose novels have never done anything for me, but her collection of occasional writing and book reviews and that sort of thing is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I love it. Same thing with William Boyd and a bunch of other people. Even Martin Amis, a perfect example. Martin Amis has never written a novel that I've liked. But his collections of essays, I love them. Absolutely love them. The War Against Cliché, I think, is a great book. So I'm going to give this a try. And if it works the way it has with other authors, then it will go in this room, in the aforementioned shelf with the yellow spine right there. This bookcase right here is authors, belles lettres. This is books about books, essays about reading. I will give this a try, and if it the same pattern holds and I end up loving it even though I didn't like his novels, then it'll stay in this room. And then the last book, believe it or not, this is the last one. It's a huge mail haul, I know, for somebody who just said he was limiting how many books he got. But I am, again, limiting how many books I'm not limiting how many books I get, but I'm limiting how many books I keep. I want my book collection to be neat and clean. I want it to be under control. I swear, no matter how many books you see come into this home on these videos, I swear, if you came to Hyde Cottage and walked in the door, got assaulted by my little terrier, and then walked around, you would not see an out-of-control horde of books. You would see a controlled book collection. I swear you would see that. But this last one is something I mentioned on this channel not having. I mentioned that I don't have a biography of Abraham Lincoln. And I found one today for free. It's a little bit ratty, but I'll fix it up. And it's this. It's With Malice Toward None by Steven Oats. And this came out probably 30 years ago, and I remember liking it very much when I originally read it. This came out in 1977. Oh, good Lord. All right, so 50 years ago. But still, I remember liking it very much. I remember thinking, this is anecdotal in just the right way, where you signal that you're relating something that's probably grounded on anecdote, but you signal it clearly, but you also tell it well. I like that, because there's a lot of anecdotes that have grown up around this president. And it seems wrong not to have a biography, but it also seemed wrong for me to get, some old, I think Beveridge's book on Lincoln was at the Brattle the last time I was there. What's the point, though? What would be the point in getting it when Lincoln scholarship has left it in the dust? Same thing, I hate to say, with Carl Sandburg, whose 3 volumes on Lincoln are beautifully written, but they don't reflect anything like recent scholarship. They're mostly just poetic hagiography, whereas this will be close enough for me. I'm not a Lincoln fanatic. This will certainly do, for instance, until the publishing world provides me with the next 1,000-page Lincoln biography, which probably won't be 2 or 3 more years. I probably won't have to wait even that long before a 1,000-page Lincoln biography hooves into view on the horizon. I'll just have that. But in the meantime, I'm looking forward to rereading this. It has been quite some time since I did. Oh, God. All right, so that's it. It's too many books to make a stack. That's a huge used book haul, and I that I did just because I was out and about. And the good news is I'm not going anywhere tomorrow. So nowhere. So I'm purely my puppy's property tomorrow. So there'll be no used books then, just the books that come in the mail. But in the meantime, I'll wrap this up and I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.